Coming up on today's Next Fan Up podcast, we'll preview all the games in Week 11 of the NFL, but there's one story that required James to say this.
My brain boils thinking about it. I'm going to go back and listen to Gummy Bears so I can calm down.
I could certainly go for some gummy bears. They'd be quite delicious right now. Next Fan Up podcast, here we go.
That's how we start. Yeah, baby.
32 super fans.
Where do the reports come from? Did you get an initial?
One PodVader.
That's football.
Every angle of the NFL covered.
All that kind of stuff, I get it.
This,
no question about it,
is Next Fan Up.
We're going to unleash hell here in December.
Hello and welcome to, I hope it's not another Jim Mora week. That's right. The classic Jim Mora cut. You think you know, but you don't know, and you never will. That was last week, as I mentioned to everyone on Twitter. Man, it was a rough week last week, but hopefully this week will be better. Rough, by the way, just so you know, specifically what I'm referring to, I only got 4 picks right last week, which is pretty bad. But I was bad, but I wasn't by myself in being bad. Our best last week in our pick'em group was 8 out of 13. So that's still pretty weak, quite honestly. It was a tie between 2 folks. Put it on the board, Nick and Sybil Faulty, whom it turns out is Paul from New Zealand, who can't join us because the time difference is just too much to overcome. I think it's like 16 hours, which is a big deal. Anyway, let me introduce you to the guys that can join us. And as always, our Thursday regular is James, our Eagles superfan. He's a little fired up. I have a feeling, though, we have a similar take on what he's fired up about.
Yeah, what's up, Pod? Don. Fans, don't believe everything you hear. Don't believe everything you read, because today's podcast will be brought to you by the letters B and S.
Yep, it's a very similar take. Also joining us, and I'm just gonna spoil the power rankings right now. It is the representative of the team that is ranked number 1 in the Superfan Power Rankings. It is Don of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Don, you started the season at position 17. That was your week 1 ranking.
Yeah, it's now everybody's buying the hype. Everybody's getting on the bandwagon now. I was a little apprehensive going in myself to the season because I didn't expect this much of an improvement by Lamar, and I didn't expect such a decent, especially running games that the Ravens defense has had lately. But yeah, everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid now, so I'm anticipating some kind of a back-breaking loss in the next couple weeks, and then people will say he's overrated and the Ravens are overrated, the usual stuff.
By the way, speaking of drinking the Kool-Aid, I am literally drinking Kool-Aid. I enjoy my Kool-Aid. Grape flavored today. It's delicious.
Pod.
Grape is always the way to go.
I do. I'm not lying. I drink I drink at least 2 quarts of Kool-Aid a day.
That's not good.
Oh, it's great. What are you talking about? It's the sugar-free, so I'm not gaining any calories, but I'm putting a lot of cancer in my body, apparently.
Yeah, red dye.
It would happen one way or another, so.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, get ready, ladies and gentlemen. Nextfanup@gmail.com is our email address. @NFU Podcast is our Twitter. And Facebook.com/NFU Podcast, a great place where you can have dialogue where James or I or one of the other superfans can actually reply to you. I mean, we could do it on Twitter too, but it's a little bit more awkward on Twitter. And we're going to start off with the news that a certain quarterback by the name of Colin Kaepernick has been given an opportunity to work out in front of all 32 teams this coming Saturday. I believe it's scheduled for sometime in the afternoon, right in the midst of all the college football games that are going on, that I'm sure every team has got their scouts out going to some of these major college football teams. It's in Atlanta, also not necessarily centrally located for every NFL team. Although I guess most NFL teams will send their scouts to the SEC. I don't know. Listen, ultimately what I'm going to say is it's a dog and pony show. There's no way in the world that Colin Kaepernick is going to be signed by an NFL team. It's just not going to happen. And yes, a little bit has to do with the fact that I believe in some manner or fashion he was blacklisted by the NFL, but I also believe it's because it's 3 years out of the league. I heard an actual player, Nate Burleson, said this: when you're out of the league for 1 year, you come back and you're fine. You don't have much to worry about. You get the rust off and you're back into football shape. You're out of the league for 2 years and the odds are really stacked against you. It's tough, not impossible. You're out of the league for 3 years, hang them up because it ain't going to happen. Your body just now, he hasn't been hit. So all of the injuries that he's ever had have all healed up. He's 100%, but that doesn't mean anything. And the other thing I'll say about this before I let James take the floor is I saw his workout tape, the highlight tape that he sent out in September. And I mentioned in that tape that one, the receiver in that tape was doing him no favors because he was body catching the ball. But two, his throws were off target. He was throwing behind the wide receiver in what was supposed to be a highlight tape. So if this is the best that he could do and he's throwing off target, I want no part of it. That's all I'm going to say about that. I think it's a dog and pony show. It's being done for PR, I suppose. Quite honestly, I don't even know why the NFL is doing this. James, the floor is yours, my friend.
So for starters, yeah, it's a PR stunt. On that, we do agree. And it's a horrible PR stunt. As far as his abilities and whether he can still play or not, that's where we disagree. I'm just going to go over a couple of things here that I've read from mostly ESPN outlets, and I've seen the same stuff across other sites. But to start with, several teams have been in contact with the league office to ask about Kaepernick's status. And the league has grown tired of telling the teams they're free to find out for themselves. Potentially interested teams haven't wanted to bring Kaepernick in for visits or workouts the way they routinely do on Tuesdays during the season, so the league is organizing Saturday's workouts so that interested teams can check him out en masse. So any questions as to why this is being done on Saturday? The league decided to do this. There's a lot to take away from that statement. Why are NFL teams questioning the league about a player they're free to sign? That's the first thing I have a problem with. Yep. You can bring in anybody you want, anytime you want, typically on Tuesdays, because that's the day that pretty much starts the beginning of the new week for the season. And that's when you tend to bring in all your players for workouts for whatever positions you want to try them out for. Going to the league office to ask if you can bring in Kaepernick makes no sense. Yeah, he's had a collusion case. That's been settled. You should not have any more questions on whether you can bring this guy in or not. If you really wanted to bring him in, you'd bring him in. The PR stunts of teams 2 years ago, every time his name came up when teams were signing horrible backup quarterbacks who had no business even stepping foot back on a football field after their star quarterback's gone down, because it was a litany of teams and every coach going out there saying, well, he's a solid player and that's not my call. I'll leave that up to management. And then management just deferring to not answer the question at all. And now you want to 2 years later say, well, I don't know, we should ask the league. No. This is just mind-boggling. The fact that the league is forcing this on a Saturday instead of a Tuesday is also a problem. On Saturday is a travel day. All the away teams are leaving to go to their destinations to play games on Sunday. So you know who's not going to be there? Head coaches and general managers, because they're typically at the game site on Sunday or Monday whenever the teams are playing. The 6 teams off the rip that I can think of that may show up with their head coaches and GMs on Saturday are the 2 teams playing tonight, Pittsburgh and Cleveland, and the 4 teams on bye this week. Outside of that, no other coach or GM is going. They may send someone from the scouting department. Secondly, the league
just before you move to your second point, just to clarify, there have been a number of teams that have already said they are sending a representative, but you are correct. I guarantee there will not be a single GM or a single head coach.
Right. Now, the league initially was going to give Kaepernick and his team of representatives a list of those teams that were going to send a representative, and then decided, no, we're not going to do that. So that's why teams, Pod, to your statement that you just made, that's why teams themselves have said they were going to send representatives, because the league is not telling Kaepernick who's coming. So he has no idea who he's working out for or anything like that, which is why his tweet makes so much sense now. And if you've been on Twitter, you would have seen him tweet, looking forward to meeting all the coaches and GMs on Saturday. Yeah, that's a dig at the NFL, because he knows there are not going to be any coaches or GMs there. The people who pretty much have a say-so in making decisions. Now, being signed this season, 90% chance not going to happen. Tape out there in consideration for next season, sure. But at the end of the day, this is the biggest farce of backhanded help that I've ever seen in my life. And I fault Kaepernick in no way, shape, or form for anything that he's done from the time he started his protest to this point. He wants to get back in the league. He's done everything he can to get back in the league. We all know the league has blackballed him. We know he's been working out. Whether that workout's good or bad is up to each person's individual opinion. Pod, I know what you said about the tape at the beginning of the season, all fine and fair, but were those receivers that he was throwing to actually NFL caliber? That's something to take away from that as well. Maybe they're not, going all out because they have nothing to gain from working out with him anyway. That notwithstanding, if you are the head coach of a GM of a team and you want a player, you go get that player. You don't ask the league, hey, can I bring this guy in? Because guess what? The Cleveland Browns didn't ask about Kareem Hunt after he was suspended by the league, whether they could sign him to a contract. They just signed him to a contract and waited for the league to suspend him for half the year. And what happened this past Sunday? Kareem Hunt suited up for the Cleveland Browns and played football, no questions asked. Baltimore Ravens didn't ask the league if they should take any more discipline after the mere 2-game suspension of Ray Rice a couple of years ago. They left him on the roster until the league suspended him for the entire season, and then indefinitely shortly thereafter, and then they removed him from the roster. Philadelphia Eagles, the New York Jets, and the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't ask the league for permission when they signed Michael Vick. So why are these teams going to the league office to ask permission to even work out a player?
Well, it's obvious. It's obvious.
We know why it's obvious. But Pod, also to your point, and I brought this up numerous times, yeah, he's been out of the league 3 years. Jeff George and Vinny Testaverde back in the day, they set out the league 2 to 3 years before teams brought them back. Collins, the quarterback, Kerry Collins set out for a couple of years before teams brought him back. He was out 2 years before I think Tennessee brought him in as a backup, and he eventually started. So the 3-year thing for quarterbacks, if you know how to throw the ball, you know how to throw the ball. You just need to learn the system. That's not a big deal for me as far as him sitting out. It's happened before in the past. Does it still happen now? Not as much. But for a quarterback with the talent of Kaepernick in today's NFL, the way offenses are run, there's no reason that he shouldn't have been signed. And as a matter of fact, I went on record because I felt that the first person who should have been signed to the Indianapolis Colts right after Andrew Luck retired was Colin Kaepernick. Look at their backup quarterback situation now. You've got Brian Hoyer, who is a sorry excuse for a football player, let alone a quarterback, giving the ball away and costing them 2 games. Yeah, that's fact. He may have looked nice in a Patriots uniform, but for the Indianapolis Colts, he is garbage.
So I agree that in terms of Brian Hoyer, he has not been good, and they definitely could have used a better quality backup quarterback. However, Colin Kaepernick is not doing this workout to be a backup quarterback. He has said he wants to be a starter.
But Pod, that's the discrepancy. that's the big discrepancy because Kaepernick's team has already I'm not going to say they filed agreements, but they had to put out fires